In today's video, we're going to explore something called Regional Host Pools. This is a new capability which is recently released by Microsoft, and it's basically something which will make Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 a lot more resilient. So, in today's video, we're going to explore what Regional Host Pools are, we're going to explore why you need them, we're going to explore how to deploy it, and then we'll go through the console and just see what these look like from the Azure Virtual Desktop portal perspective. So, if you're interested in Azure Virtual Desktop or if you use Azure Virtual Desktop, then you definitely don't want to miss this video. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Neil McLaughlin. I am the Virtual Manc. On this channel, I release videos about Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows switches, Intune, Nerdio, and much more. So if that's the type of content that you'd like to see, please click the like and subscribe button because it really helps me grow the channel. All right, so let's take a bit of time explaining what's happening here. So Azure Virtual Desktop itself is actually a service which is hosted in Azure. Okay, within that service, you have a lot of information. So that information all sits within a database, right? And we have what we call metadata. Okay, so what does metadata consist of? So what the metadata actually is, it's all the configuration of structure of your host pools. It's the relationship between the session host and the host pool. And it's also like the user setting, who's got access to the host pools. So it's a really critical service because obviously if the metadata isn't available, then it means that you won't be able to access the Azure Virtual Desktop service, which means that your users won't be able to log onto their desktops, right? So it's a really important function. Now, historically, this has been hosted geographically. And what do I mean by that? So essentially within Azure, you have different regions. You have North Europe, you have Americas, you have UK South, you have lots of different data centers. And basically, the Azure Virtual Desktop metadata was hosted geographically, not on a per region basis. So that means essentially that, for example, your metadata for your Azure Virtual Desktop host pool, if your host pool is in UK South, may sit somewhere else within the Central Europe region, right? It could be in UK West, it could be in UK South. That causes a problem for two reasons. For me, the most important one is like data sovereignty. So a lot of like financial institutions or insurance industries, you have to have data sovereignty, right? So if you're storing information like usernames and session host names or something, they have to stay within that specific region. So Germany is a classic example of that, right? You want that data to stay local. So what this new feature will enable you to do, it'll enable you to essentially to pin that data to that region, right? That gives you a benefit for two reasons. Number one, the data sovereignty issue that we talked about. So if all my employees are in Germany or Italy or Spain, and I specify my host pool information within that data center, that metadata will now be inside that data center. So that means you're safe from a sort of data sovereignty point of view. The second region is the resiliency. So for example, if my host pools are in UK South and the metadata is currently sitting in a data center in North Europe, for example, and North Europe goes down, even though my session hosts are in UK South, it means I can't access them, right? Because I can't access the AVD service itself. So this is going to provide a bit more resiliency because I presume, rather than because the metadata is now hosted inside the actual region rather than geographically, it means that it'll be a lot more resilient because if I'm not going to lose a whole geographic region, right? And so you're going to increase your resiliency there. So think of it like this is not more of a new feature, it's more of a re-architecture of the way like Azure Virtual Desktop has been working. All right, so that's essentially what the new feature is. What we're going to do now, we're actually going to go into the portal, we're going to enable this new feature, and then we'll see what it looks like. From a user perspective, you won't see anything different, right? And so let's go to enable it. All right, let's get going. All right, so we're going to be following through the deployment steps. They've actually got the deployment steps on the Microsoft Learn website. So you can see here, we need to go into the Azure subscription and then run a few PowerShell commands. And then once we've done that, we can then enable that feature and then select it within the portal and then create a host. It's not mega exciting. You're not going to see any crazy difference, but I just wanted to show you this if you want to deploy it inside your environment. The only thing to mention at the moment is public preview. So it's only available for 2 regions currently. So obviously they're going to be rolling this out globally soon. All right, so let's get into the Azure console and then let's enable this. So the first thing we need to do is to register the feature. So register -AZ provided features and the feature name AVD Regional Host Pool Public Preview. All right, so I'm just going to select that. Okay, so that's now registered that against my subscription and tenant. Okay, so what we do now is we'll go and see if we can actually create this. So the next thing we need to do is to install the pre-release version of the AZ module, because that's one which contains the required PowerShell commands for this. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. So just going to paste that. So install -module name az.desktop virtualization, and then allow pre-release. All right, we're installed. So now we can actually go and use the PowerShell command and to go and create the host pool. As you probably realize by now, we can't do this via the GUI, right? At this stage, it's only in public preview. So we'll go ahead and do this via PowerShell. Okay, so now let's head over to the PowerShell console. And so you can see we've got the new AVD host pool. We've got the deployment scope set to regional, right? So this is the difference that we've got here. What we've actually done now, we'll go ahead and create this. So if I just click enter, it's going to come a second. So that's gone ahead and created that host pool, right? So you can see that information here. Now, if we head over into the Azure portal, we should now see that host pool created. So here is our host pool. You can see here it says regional test, and you notice what the difference is here. Deployment scope regional, right? And so rather than it being geographical, it now says deployment scope regional. Okay, so that means that the metadata is within the region rather than being in geographical. So rather than being in, say, I don't know, anywhere within the US, it will be within US East 2. Okay, within that region. That's pretty much all the feature is. Doesn't sound much, but I'd imagine it's pretty critical for some scenarios, especially for data sovereignty and highly resilient infrastructure as well. It's just meant to make the AVD service a lot more resilient and obviously easier to deploy for those sort of government, financial, insurance type of deployments where you need that data sovereignty. So yeah, that's pretty much it this week. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please click the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next week for another one. Thanks. Bye bye.